On this Whiteboard Wednesday, we're going to talk about something really important, and that is goals and goal setting. Why is goal setting so important? It provides us direction and focus on what we need to do with our training. It also allows us to qualify or quantify what success actually looks like. How do we know if we've achieved what we're trying to achieve? So what is a goal? It's basically a statement of intent. A lot of people will use the acronym SMART when it comes to goals, and say you should have SMART goals, and SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-based. And that's a really good mnemonic to use when you want to actually write your goals. It's not the be-all and end-all of designing goals that lead to effective goal setting and actual goal achievement. We should consider different ways of articulating goals and the different types of goals we can actually use. We can further break goals down into being subjective or objective. A subjective goal is a general statement of intent, and it's generally something that can't be measured. So it might be a vague or an overall sort of idea of what we want to do, but it's not something we can easily track, manage, or measure. It might be something like, I want to improve my health, or I want to be fitter, or I want to be stronger. What that means to you and what that means to me might be entirely different. A lot of people will say subjective goals are useless and you should just use objective goals. I actually disagree on this. Subjective goals can actually be a really good start point to work out what your priorities are. If you can only define them subjectively, that's okay. It's better than nothing. It gives you a frame to work with, and you can then break it down into more specific and objective goals that all collectively come together to achieve that subjective goal. Objective goals, on the other hand, again, statements of intent, but they can be measured, and they focus on some sort of proficiency or achievement that usually is time-based as well. Objective goals actually can be measured. And that's what's really important, the big difference between the two. You can then measure and define success and actually work out, have you actually achieved that or not? There are three types of goals. We have outcome goals, performance goals, and process goals. And all three are useful for different reasons. An outcome goal generally focuses on a specific achievement that you don't have complete control over. And that's typically linked to some sort of competition or competitive event. It might be something like coming first in a competition, medaling, being in the top 5 or the top 10. You have input into actually achieving that goal, but there are other people external to you that can influence it. Now, these goals are really dependent on the competition that you have. Now, a performance goal focuses on specific achievements that are independent of other competitors. So, for example, it might be to squat 150 kilograms in a powerlifting competition, regardless of where you place, whether you come first, second, third, fourth, 10th, or whatever, it doesn't matter. It solely relies on you. A process goal will look at a specific action that actually is a part of an achievement. So again, if we go back to powerlifting, a process goal might be linked to achieving specific depth on all your squats, regardless of what the weight is. In the case of Mac, who's a golfer, he might focus on a particular part of his swing when it comes to actually playing golf. It's not so much about the actual score of what he gets on each hole, but it's about doing a specific movement or action in his golf swing that's going to lead to a better motor pattern and a better chance of success overall. If you don't do the process goal, it can impact the overall performance or outcome. And they can then turn into things like cues, which coaches use all the time in training to reinforce a process goal to make sure someone does what's required. We can also look at goals that occur during practice or competition if we're into some sort of competitive sport. If we're just doing fitness training outside of a sport, then we can look at our training versus testing. Now, we don't necessarily always have to focus our goals on the competition or testing days. Now, we'll look at the actual timeline for goals. I personally like breaking goals down into 3 distinct parts: short term, mid-term, and long term. And I generally categorize short term as within the next 3 months or so, and that might be the next 2 weeks, the next 4 weeks, the next 2 months, or the next 3 months. But pretty much anything under 3 months I call a short-term goal. The midterm or midterm goals are really going to be around the 6-month mark, so anywhere between 6 months to short of a year really fits that midterm. Let's look at long-term goals finally, as around the 12-month or 1 year mark. They might be larger, it might be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, or even 4 years, but you get the general gist. You want to break them down into manageable chunks of time that you can focus on. A key part about goals is they should be realistic, but at the same time they should actually be challenging. So setting realistic but easy to achieve goals may not drive you to work hard enough to actually do what's required to get the best outcome. How much challenge a goal should be for you might be very different to me. An important part of goal setting though is to actually record the goal at the start. work out what your goals are, so plan them, break them up into long-term, mid-term, short-term. Then at key points, we should actually measure our achievement towards these goals. We may need to refine our goal, we may need to make it more challenging, we might need to make it less challenging, or we might need to change the timeline, or we might find out the goal was actually wrong, and that's okay. It gave us something to start with and something to work towards. Then as you get more experience with training, you actually work out what you want to do. And the more accurate your goals will be, they'll actually be aligned more towards what your priorities are and not just pipe dreams or fantasies. Another thing we should do with our goals is also prioritize them. We have to go through and work out what's the most important one, then what's the second most important one, and so on. Doing that allows you to focus on what's the highest priority. Otherwise, we might focus our efforts onto other goals that are a lot less important and actually don't contribute to our overall success.